Have you seen this scene play out in a bustling open-plan office? A Gen Z employee lets out a quiet sigh, then types a message to their manager. Hey, I need to take a mental health day today to reset. The millennial manager, after a brief moment of surprise, types back, okay, take care of yourself. 10 years ago, a message like that would have been unthinkable. Today, it's becoming the new normal. Younger employees are demanding that their mental well-being be taken as seriously as their physical health, and in doing so, they are shattering a decades-old taboo that has shrouded the workplace in silence. Mental health is no longer a whispered secret. It's a top-tier priority supercharged by a global pandemic. A 2024 American Psychological Association survey revealed that younger workers, specifically those under 44, report the highest levels of daily stress. For companies, ignoring this isn't just bad for morale, it's a direct threat to the bottom line, potentially costing you your best and brightest talent. Today, we're diving deep into how Gen Z and millennials are dragging workplace mental health out of the shadows, and why understanding this revolution is more critical than ever for your career and your company's success. Don't let the silence on mental health hold you back. Hit subscribe on GenShift now to learn how to build a healthier, more supportive workplace for everyone. Part 1, When Silence Was Golden, the data behind the breaking point. For decades, the unofficial motto of the corporate world was leave your problems at the door. The traditional workplace treated mental health as a deeply private, almost shameful affair. Stress, anxiety, and depression were seen not as legitimate health issues, but as signs of personal weakness or a lack of professionalism. Employees who struggled often did so in silence, fearing that speaking up would label them as fragile or incapable, potentially derailing their careers. The ideal employee was a stoic, unflappable machine whose personal turmoil never breached the office walls. Then the pandemic hit. It wasn't the start of the mental health crisis, but it was the great accelerator. It forced a global conversation that could no longer be ignored. And at the forefront of this conversation were Gen Z and millennials, who became the loudspeakers for a problem that everyone was suddenly feeling. The data paints a stark picture of this new reality. According to the American Psychological Association's 2024 Work in America survey, about half of all younger workers feel the strain daily, with 48% of those aged 18, 25 and 51% of those aged 26, 43 reporting they feel tense or stressed during their workday. Research from the McKinsey Health Institute is even more direct, finding that Gen Z reports the highest prevalence of mental illness of any generation. Deloitte's 2025 survey adds another layer, with 40% of Gen Z and 34% of millennials saying they feel stressed or anxious all or most of the time. But these aren't just abstract numbers. They are the direct result of a perfect storm of modern pressures. For Gen Z, financial insecurity is a massive driver, with a staggering 81% citing money as a significant stressor. They are navigating a world of economic precarity while also being plugged into an always-on digital culture that research has linked to higher rates of depression and anxiety. Add to that a layer of existential dread, with 77% of Gen Z reporting anxiety about the future of the world. These statistics are screaming a fundamental truth. The old model of separating work from life is dead. It's not just outdated, it's impossible. The modern workplace is now inheriting the emotional and psychological fallout from these immense societal pressures, and it has no choice but to respond. Part 2, the speaking up generation and the pandemic's permanent mark. The key difference isn't just that younger generations are more stressed, it's that they are radically more open about it. Gen Z in particular treats mental health with a level of transparency that is revolutionary. They've grown up in a world where therapy, anxiety, and burnout are part of the common vocabulary. They discuss their mental health journeys on TikTok, share coping strategies on Instagram, and see absolutely no shame in seeking help. For them, mental health is simply health. Millennials, now largely in their 30s and early 40s, are the crucial bridge in this movement. They entered a workforce dominated by hustle culture, where burnout was often seen as a badge of honor. Many suffered in silence, ground down by unsustainable expectations. Now, as they step into management roles, they are driven by a powerful sense of empathy. They are the leaders who get it because they've lived it. They are actively dismantling the very systems of overwork and emotional suppression that wore them down, determined not to pass that toxicity onto the next generation. This shift in attitude has real economic teeth. According to a landmark Harvard Business Review report, a stunning 75% of Gen Z and 48% of millennials have quit jobs for mental health reasons. This isn't just a cultural trend, it's a massive lever of economic power that is forcing companies to pay attention. The COVID-19 pandemic acted as the great normalizer for this movement. It was a universal stressor that shattered the illusion of invulnerability. Suddenly, everyone was struggling. Saying I'm not okay was no longer a confession of personal failure, but a statement of shared human experience. This collective vulnerability legitimized the conversation on a global scale. It empowered Gen Z and millennials to shift from quiet endurance to active demands. They began pushing for tangible support, from better mental health benefits to company-sponsored online forums where they could connect and share resources, a trend clearly identified in Deloitte's research. The pandemic didn't invent the workplace mental health crisis, but it created the perfect conditions for it to finally be addressed openly, transforming it from a taboo topic into a non-negotiable part of the modern employee value proposition. Part 3, a tale of 4 generations comparing attitudes on mental health. The modern workplace is a fascinating intersection of 4 distinct generational mindsets, each with its own unique approach to mental health. Gen Z is defined by their proactive and completely destigmatized stance. They don't just hope for a culture that supports mental well-being, they demand it as a condition of their employment. They will unapologetically ask for a mental health day because they view it as a legitimate form of sick leave. They don't see struggles like anxiety or burnout as character flaws, but as valid health conditions that require care and accommodation. They are comfortable using direct language, telling a manager, "I'm at capacity," or "I need help with this," reframing vulnerability as a form of self-aware communication. Millennials represent a journey from reactivity to proactivity. They remember the suck it up and grind culture they entered. Many experienced the harsh realities of burnout firsthand and are now committed to creating a different reality for their teams. As managers, they are driven by an empathy born from experience. They are the ones championing policies they wish they'd had, like establishing clear boundaries around after-hours emails or advocating for more accessible employee assistance programs. They serve as a vital cultural translator, bridging the gap between Gen Z's expectations and the more traditional views of older leadership. For Gen X and baby boomers, the default approach has historically been one of stoicism and privacy. Raised in eras where mental health was rarely discussed, let alone in a professional context, their instinct is often to handle such matters behind closed doors. However, their adaptation is a story of pragmatism. They are seeing the undeniable data: when the mental well-being of younger teams is ignored, productivity plummets and turnover skyrockets. They are adapting not always from a place of shared openness, but from a clear-eyed understanding of the business case. Ignoring the issue has simply become too expensive. This generational divide is more than just a difference in communication styles. It signals a fundamental transfer of soft power within the workplace. The cultural and emotional expectations of the youngest generation are now setting the agenda. Because companies are desperate to attract and retain young talent, they are forced to listen and implement changes. And these changes, like more flexibility, empathetic management, and better mental health support, are policies that ultimately benefit the well-being and productivity of all employees, including those from older generations who may have been less comfortable or empowered to ask for them. In essence, Gen Z's radical transparency is forcing a wave of workplace humanization that is lifting all boats. Have you ever felt you needed a mental health day, but were afraid to ask? Or have you ever been surprised when a younger colleague spoke openly about stress or burnout? Share your experience with mental health at work in the comments below. We're always listening. Part 4, the corporate playbook from perks to psychological safety. As this cultural shift accelerates, companies are scrambling to adapt. Their responses range from foundational policies to deep cultural transformations. At the most basic level, we've seen a surge in mental wellness benefits. This includes expanding employee assistance programs, or EAPs, which offer confidential counseling. But it also includes a new wave of digital tools. Companies are offering free subscriptions to apps like Calm and Headspace, providing flexible leave policies and creating dedicated mental health resource hubs. For Gen Z, these aren't flashy perks. They are the bare minimum, a crucial signal that an employer sees them as a whole person and is invested in their well-being. More importantly, the conversation is moving beyond policy and into culture. The most effective leaders are fostering what can be called an "Are you okay?" environment. They are proactively checking in with their team members during one-on-one meetings, asking specifically about workload stress levels and capacity. This represents a monumental shift from the old reactive model where managers only stepped in when a crisis was already underway. Of course, this adaptation hasn't been without its challenges. Many managers from older generations initially struggled sometimes, viewing the new openness as a sign of weakness or a lack of resilience in younger staff. But the data on turnover and performance has been a powerful motivator. They're quickly learning that empathy isn't a soft skill anymore. It's a core leadership competency required to retain talent. A key factor in this education has been the new vocabulary that Gen Z and Millennials have brought into the workplace. Terms like burnout, psychological safety, and toxic positivity are now part of the corporate lexicon. Toxic positivity, for instance, is the well-intentioned but harmful practice of dismissing negative feelings with forced optimism. Think of responding to a burned-out colleague with a cheerful, "Look on the bright side." By naming and defining these concepts, younger generations are giving the entire organization a more precise language to diagnose cultural problems and build more authentic, supportive environments. This isn't a temporary fad. All evidence suggests this is an irreversible evolution in how we manage people. The link between well-being and business success is now so clear that to ignore it is to choose to be left behind. Part 5, the ROI of empathy and a practical guide to action. One of the biggest benefits is early intervention. When employees aren't afraid of being judged, they seek help sooner. A millennial manager feels empowered to ask for a deadline extension on a high-pressure project, preventing a full-blown burnout episode. This proactive help-seeking stops small problems from escalating into crises that lead to resignations or long-term leave. This directly translates to retaining valuable talent. Second, it dramatically increases engagement and loyalty. When a company invests in the whole person, not just the output they produce, employees feel valued and respected. As Deloitte's research consistently shows, this sense of being cared for is a primary driver of employee loyalty and discretionary effort. People are simply more willing to go the extra mile for an employer they believe has their back. Finally, it fosters a culture of peer support. Openness builds community. We're seeing Gen Z and Millennials organically create their own support networks at work, from informal check-ins to dedicated Slack channels for team motivation or wellness wins, creating a powerful grassroots safety net. So how can we all contribute to this positive shift? For individuals, learn to advocate for yourself effectively. Don't be afraid to use the resources your company offers, whether it's an EAP or a designated mental health day. When you talk to your manager, be prepared and solution-oriented. Instead of just saying, "I'm stressed," try framing it with specifics. "I'm feeling overwhelmed by the competing deadlines for Project A and Project B. Could we discuss reprioritizing them to ensure the best quality work?" This turns a complaint into a collaborative problem-solving session. For managers, your role is pivotal. Get trained in mental health first aid MHFA. This training gives you a simple framework like the ALGE action plan: assess, listen, give reassurance. Encourage self-help to confidently and effectively support an employee in distress without having to be a therapist. Lead by example by setting your own healthy boundaries, and most importantly, make proactive check-ins a regular part of your routine. For organizations, build a true wellness ecosystem. This means going beyond a meditation app and integrating support into your company's DNA. Establish anonymous feedback channels to get an honest assessment of employee well-being. Use that data to drive real change, like adjusting team workloads or implementing a no-meeting Fridays policy. This demonstrates that you're not just listening, but acting. As today's younger workers become tomorrow's leaders, these human-centric practices will become the undisputed standard for high-performing organizations. Conclusion: the human-centric workplace is here to stay. The revolution is here. Led by the unapologetic honesty of Gen Z and the hard-won wisdom of millennials' mental health has been dragged out of the corporate shadows and placed directly under the boardroom spotlight. This is not a passing trend. It is a profound and irreversible cultural transformation. The workplace is becoming more human because it has to. The old walls separating our professional and personal selves have crumbled, and in their place, a new expectation has risen that we be seen supported and valued as whole people. The stigma that once forced millions to suffer in silence is being dismantled conversation by conversation, mental health day by mental health day. As the generations driving this change ascend into leadership, empathy will become a core competency, and psychological safety will be treated as a key performance indicator. A workplace that prioritizes mental well-being will no longer be the exception. It will be the standard. Ultimately, building an environment that supports mental health isn't just a kinder, more compassionate way to do business. It is the only way to build an organization that is resilient, innovative, and sustainable for the future. It is simply better for everyone. Have you ever taken a day off for your mental health? What was your company's reaction? If you feel comfortable, share your story in the comments. You never know who it might help. And remember to subscribe to GenShift as we continue to explore how to build a world of work where everyone can thrive.